Hey everybody, welcome to Highlands Postcards from Boston. My name is Bob Babbitt. We are brought to you by both Highlands and Polar. Our guest, Katherine Nichols, the author of a hot new book called Deep Water. Katherine, how you doing?
I'm great, Bob. Thank you for having me.
Well, first of all, people can qualify for Boston a lot of ways, right? Running a fast marathon. But 140 people qualified last year in Kona. That means before they ran their marathon to qualify, they swam 2.4 miles on the Big Island, Hawaii. They rode 112 miles. Then they ran the marathon fast enough to qualify for the Boston Marathon, and you're one of those 140. How fast did you run?
So I didn't do it last year.
Year before?
So no, actually, I've done 5 different Ironmans, but each time I have managed to do a qualifying time for Boston. So one time I actually used it to get into Boston, and I think I ran 3:36.
3:36?
Yeah.
Off the bike at the end?
Off the bike, yeah.
Wow.
It was- yeah.
So, Katherine, talk a little bit about, because you go back a long way.
Yeah. We go back a long way.
We go back a long way. You grew up in San Diego,
Yep.
and swimming was your sport early on?
Early on, I started as an age group swimmer at about age 7. I had
Okay.
asthma, and somehow the doctor thought that would help, and it did.
Yeah.
And then I started running and playing other sports, and I did my first triathlon when I was 9, because my parents were very athletic,
Right.
and it was kind of the place where everything was happening. So I thought, oh, this sounds fun. So that's how it all started.
And eventually that moved into, qualifying for Ironman, and then you got pretty serious about this whole triathlon thing, traveling world championships and stuff along that line too?
I've done the World Championships 3 times, but I did qualify in Cozumel this past year for 2017. So I will be at Kona again this year.
Oh, you're coming back
Yes,
to
I'm
Kona.
coming back. I'm so
Nice.
excited. I'm just waiting for my training partner from Hawaii, Rachel
Right.
Ross, to qualify too.
So you
keep your
have
fingers
been, I knew you rode a little bit for us at
Yes.
Competitor. You rode
Love that.
in Hawaii for a Honolulu Advertiser.
Yep. And the Star Bulletin.
Had you done a book before?
No, this is actually my first book to be published.
And talk a little bit about how this came about.
Well, it's kind of a long story, but the short version
okay.
is I grew up around this story of these swimmers and surfers and water polo players.
From Coronado.
From Coronado. They were before my time. They went to
Right.
Coronado High School, where I went, but I
Yes.
was quite a bit after their time. And I kept hearing this story, and along the way I thought, this is a fantastic idea for a book. Why don't I write this, but I'll fictionalize it so I can kind of make the facts a little bit more malleable.
Right.
And I did that, and no one really wanted the story at that time. They thought, oh, this is really implausible, because it does sound implausible.
Well, the basic premise is you've got your clean-cut swimmer
Right.
types who realize that they were close enough to the Mexican border. It's hard to get drugs across the border, but they could swim them
Yes.
across the border.
Right.
How did they do that?
They basically went down to Tijuana
Yes.
and got a bundle of marijuana,
Yes.
maybe between 20 and 50 pounds they were doing, and they rigged a surfboard leash, tied a bundle that was, wrapped up in waterproof casing,
Yes.
and dragged it behind them with, they wore fins, but they were already great swimmers, and they knew the ocean. They were lifeguards and surfers, so they understood the tides, they
Yes.
understood how to navigate, and they did it. And it was like the ideal startup. And later they recruited their Spanish teacher to help them with some of their business opportunities, and he turned out to be an operational genius and quite a talented CEO, and he turned the whole thing into a $100 million operation.
$100 million drug operation for,
yeah.
these were high school now. So when
Yeah.
these kids, how long did this whole thing last?
Years. So don't forget, this is the advent of the DEA. It was like 1972, 73, 74. So they managed to stay on the run for a long time. And I'm not going to give too much away.
No,
but
don't give
I gotta
give
read
too
the
much
book. It's
away.
a fun beach read this summer. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's a true story. So the genre is narrative nonfiction. So while I have to deal with the exact facts of what actually happened,
this is factual.
it is factual. I had a little room to move in connecting the facts. So if you're familiar with In Cold Blood by
Yes,
Truman Capote,
yes.
he kind of pioneered the narrative nonfiction genre. So you can put a little bit of imagination into some of the conversations if people are no longer alive and you
Right.
can't really verify those things, but you cannot change the facts or how things unfolded.
The facts are the facts.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of a fun story. It's like a fly on the wall. You're there with these guys.
Was
So-
that hard to craft that?
Yes.
Because
it was really hard to be creative within these these very strict parameters. But it was also kind of cool, and I wrote a bunch of, being a woman, writing about a bunch of guys too.
Yes.
Very different and really fun.
So when guys would graduate high school,
Yeah.
weren't the guys who were still doing it concerned that they would go off and tell other people?
Well, a couple of them were only in high school for a little bit, and then there was always the concern of too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes when business gets too big.
How many people were involved at the?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. I actually don't know the exact
Okay.
number, but dozens and dozens.
Dozens and dozens.
Yes,
So they
at
had
a
to
certain
count
point. But they had
on
4 key guys.
4 key guys.
Yeah, who were
with the
leader.
Spanish teacher.
Oh yes, he
Spanish teacher.
was the leader. They thought they could pay him $50, give him a dinner in Tijuana, and call it a day. And he's like, oh no.
If I'm all in.
I'm all in, and I know how to get this going.
And I'm a Spanish teacher, and that pension isn't that good.
Yeah. Yes, he had left by then, but exactly right. But he had the benefit of being bilingual, and it worked.
Were these guys, in terms of their lifestyle, did it change the way? Because
Oh yes.
a lot of times when people get money, all of a sudden they're living a little beyond what you think they should be.
For sure. They lived very large. They went to Santa Barbara, had polo ponies. They were members of all the clubs. They partied. In fact, when they got arrested in Santa Barbara, the people of the community were sort of upset. The DEA agents told me later on, because they were such great guys. They were involved in the community. They threw great parties. Everyone loved them. They
Charitable.
Yeah, they were. They
Very
were very
charitable.
and they weren't violent. That's a key piece.
Yeah.
So these guys were not violent. They didn't carry guns. It was really before the whole huge trafficking
Right.
came along with where everybody was incredibly violent.
Can you tell us how they got caught? Or not
No.
really? Okay.
No.
All right. Double secret.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you could read the newspapers and find out.
I
but-
feel like I'm investigating now.
Yeah.
Were there points where they had problems, like with currents and stuff when they're swimming? I mean, that water can be treacherous from Tijuana across the border. Or did they ever run into border people?
No, they can be treacherous, right? And they have
Yes.
currents and waves and all sorts of issues. But I'll say that they didn't do that very long. Then they went to Zodiacs and they went to big ships. So they scaled very quickly. They went from 20 pounds, 50 pounds. Then they were doing more and more, 100 pounds, and then they were doing, 20 tons.
So they weren't swimming
No,
that long.
they were not swimming 20 tons. That's an offload all night long on
And
Malibu Beach.
And because they were lifeguards, they
Yeah.
knew the other
Yeah.
lifeguards. They knew
Right.
when they could go and be safe and all the
Exactly.
rest of that.
Kind
when the
of.
moon would be out. and-
Exactly. So that's the key piece. These guys had the knowledge of the tides, the waves, the current. They knew what to do, when to time it, and they understood the ocean the way no one else did. And that was a differentiating factor for them.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how many marathons are you running a year now? Is it primarily mainly Boston?
No, I've run 3 Boston marathons, which I loved, and it's an amazing experience. I ran the year after the bombing,
Yeah,
which was 2014, which
yeah.
was, almost made me cry. When Meb won, it was so moving. And then I was hovering around 3 hours and wanted to break 3 hours, and finally did that with my girlfriend Rachel in Chicago, went 2:59. So I haven't, I've taken a break.
Yeah.
Because I had the book and I went back to school, and so I haven't run a marathon in a couple of years, but I look forward to getting back to it.
And you'll be doing Kona again this year, you
Yeah,
said?
so I shouldn't say that because I did do Cozumel in November, so I ran a marathon there.
Okay.
But yes, I'll be doing Kona in October. I'm really excited for it. I'm really excited to go back.
And with everything you've been working on with the book, what are your goals for Monday?
I'm not running Monday.
You're not going to run this year?
No, I'm not running this year because I have all the stuff I have going on. So
You'll be busy here at Marathon
Yes, I'm going to
Week.
be. Yes, but I'm going to be back here soon enough. Hopefully, come back next year.
And
So-
now here's the Coronado girl who lived in Hawaii and now is living back here again.
Yes. Well, I had only lived here. I actually moved here in about 2013, 2014. That was my first time living on the East Coast. So
What do
it's
you
been
think?
quite a change. Huge change. I have to give a shout out to Karen Smyers because I hooked up with her before I trained for Cozumel, and she coached me, and she has been an enormous help in helping me get used to the weather and
When
understanding
to
the
train
training.
indoors
Yes,
and where
all
to
that
train,
stuff. So
avoiding the traffic,
yeah,
all the rest of it.
she was kind of a savior for me.
I love it.
Yeah.
Cool. And when will the book come out?
The book comes out May 2nd.
You have to be
right-
so excited.
right,
Your
yes.
first book.
Yeah, so
And what a great topic.
thank
And
you.
did you find that the guys, were they helpful? Were they what were their response when you tracked them down and wanted to talk about this? Because this is their deepest secret of
Yeah,
life.
Kind of. Some of them, it's interesting because some of them really like to talk because they were really good at this, and
Right.
couldn't tell anybody about it. So there's some relief, I think, in sharing some of these.
And did the names stay the same? Or
No.
your
I had
names
to
change all the names.
Yeah, I had to change.
Facts are correct, but the names are
Yeah,
different.
yes. Some of the if they were on record and went to jail under those names and it's public record, I could use the name. But some people did ask me to change their names, and
Right.
a lot of the guys are no longer alive. So that
Wow,
was
because you think about it, that's
well, they lived hard.
50,
they lived
they
hard.
lived hard. Yeah.
So anyway, but they were the people who cooperated and the people who knew them were wonderfully helpful and had law enforcement participating.
Yeah.
And interestingly, my dad had been a judge with some of the guys who actually tried the
that's right,
case.
yes.
So I had connections there, and it was wonderful. So I had enough information to kind of flesh out the story, and of course
Love it.
everything didn't. You can't put everything in,
No.
but I focused on what I thought was the most interesting and fun part, and I hope it's enjoyable. So.
Deep water.
Deep water.
Swimmers gone bad.
Yeah. Swimmers gone entrepreneurial.
I love that.
Swimmers gone entrepreneurial.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
There we go. There's our book. Katherine Nichols has been our guest. Hold on, everybody. We will be right back.
Thank you.